welcome back to Chris's Guitar Couch. Today, I'm going to talk about what you need to know to start writing music for the guitar. More experienced musicians are already going to know a lot about what I'm going to talk about, but you're never too good to go back over the basics. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to cover why we should bother learning how to write down our music, some guitar-specific terminology, standard musical note naming that applies to all instruments. We're going to talk about rhythm. And at the end, I'm going to write down a full example of a written song. Now, I'm not talking about making music. Anybody can make music. There, I just wrote that. All you need is an instrument, make some sounds on it, keep making different sounds until you find some that you like. It's that simple. You don't need anything fancy. You don't need any special tools. You don't need to know music theory. Just do it. So if it's that easy, why do I have to waste my time learning how to write it down? Well, for a couple of reasons. First, do you remember that thing I just made up? Because I don't. If I had written it down right at the time that I had made it up, I wouldn't have forgotten it. I could go back to it now, tomorrow, or a year from now and continue to work on it. Because what I made didn't just disappear the second that I made it. Another advantage to writing music down is that when you put music, which is a linear format of time, you have to sit and you have to wait through and listen to everything to hear it. You put that into a visual format, it can really give you a different perspective on the piece. It'll give you new ideas. You can easily and quickly rearrange the structure, play the changes that you wrote down, and then if you don't like them, write down different things. Cross stuff out, move things around. Pen and paper and the knowledge about how to use them are going to be some of the strongest tools in any composer's toolbox. Lastly, once you write some music, you might want to play in a band. And if your song is written down in a way that the other members of your ensemble can understand, you'll be able to have everybody play your song easily, faster, more accurately, and with a lot less pain than without having written music. Because of those benefits, the ability to write down the music that you make, it should take your songwriting to the next level in terms of song quality and the amount of songs that you should be able to write over time. So let's get started. First, let's name some things on guitar. The strings all have names. This is the low E, A, D, G, B, and the high E. Now this can be a bit of a point of confusion because the high E is actually closer to the ground and the low E is on top. But remember, in music, it's about what sounds lower or higher, not necessarily where it's positioned on the instrument. Guitar also has these bars here called frets so that we can play more than one note on a string. They're numbered, so this is the first fret, second fret, third fret. So now, knowing the names of the strings and the numbers of the frets, we should be able to communicate what we're playing, write it down, and discuss it with other guitarists. Say, play the 7th fret of the D string. Okay, here's the D string, 7th fret. Great. So you should be able to say that to another guitarist and they'll know what you mean. But if we want to start talking about naming notes in a more general way that apply to all instruments, let's start by talking about intervals. That is the distance between two separate notes. The smallest interval in the 12-tone equal temperament tuning, that is what your guitar uses in most modern music, is called a half step. That is simply the distance of one fret. So if I play this note here and that note, the difference between them is a half step. A whole step not surprisingly, is 2 frets. There are fancy names for all sorts of different intervals, but if you know half step and whole step, you should know enough to be able to clearly communicate and document your own music. You could always say 1.5 steps or 12 half steps, and other musicians should know what you're talking about. The standard Western scale has 7 steps, and they are signified by letters A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. The 8th step, if you went one more after G, would be A. You would be back to where you started. It's called an octave because it's the 8th note of the scale. But here's the tricky part. Between these notes, sometimes there are whole steps and sometimes there are half steps. How do you know which ones are which? Well, on a keyboard it's really easy because they have black keys and white keys, and these are in the exact pattern that you need to know for where the half steps and whole steps are. Guitar, you don't have it quite so easy because all you have are frets and they're all half steps, so you just have to memorize where they are if you want to play a standard major or minor scale. The simplest way, it's not that hard. Just remember that between all lettered notes, there are whole steps, except for between the B and the C and the E and the F. Let me demonstrate. Let's start with the open A. So it's all whole steps, so we can go to the B by moving up 2 frets. Now between the B and the C is only a half step. Go up to the 3rd fret. The D is a whole step. The E is a whole step. Now between E and F is only a half step. Then the G, and then back to the octave A. But what do we call the notes in between where the whole steps are? The 1st fret of the A string. Well, that'll be called either an A sharp or a B flat. There are rules about when you should use one or over the other, but you can study that later if you want to get into this a little more deeply. For now, just maybe pick one and stick with it. Don't mix sharps and flats. Let's just stick with sharps for now. So A sharp or B flat, B, C, C sharp or D flat, D, D sharp or E flat, E, F, F sharp or G flat, G, G sharp or A flat, and then the octave A. If learning all of these notes on the neck seems a little overwhelming, let me show you a quick trick. I'm going to get my Telecaster. So most guitars will have dots on the neck telling you where some of the important spots are. There's always one with 2 dots, which is where the octave is. This is an octave E. This is an octave A. Now you only have 11 more frets to memorize. I would focus on memorizing the 3rd, 5th, and 7th frets. So on the low E, G is the 3rd fret, A is the 5th fret, and B is the 7th fret. On the A string, C is the 3rd fret, D is the 5th fret, and E is the 7th fret. Now that we can name the pitches of our notes, how high and low they are, we need to talk about their duration. Any melody is going to have differences in pitch and in rhythm, and so we better talk about rhythm. The basic unit of rhythm is called the beat. Just like that. There you go. Some beats are faster or slower. I found they correlate to about what your heartbeat is. So slower songs are going to have a tempo of 60 to 100 beats per minute, which is what a normal resting human heart rate is. Faster songs have more of a heart rate for an exercising human, with 150, 160. Normally about 120 is a nice fast song tempo. If you want to know how many beats per minute your song is, there's a really easy way to do it. You just get an app and then you tap on it and it tells you what your tempo is. I have a metronome on my phone where I can just tap it and it'll say 110 beats per minute. There are also things online. If you Google tap tempo, you'll be able to find a bunch of different websites that will allow you to do this. Beats are more commonly called quarter notes in America. In Britain, they call them crotchets, I think. But they're all basically the same thing. A group of beats is called a measure. Beats are most commonly found in groups of 4. You would counter rhythm 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Waltzes only use 3 beats per measure, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And there are other less common time signatures that, if this interests you, you should read more about. But for now, most songs have 4 beats per measure, so we'll just assume that's what we're working with. When we talk about a song, what we usually refer to are words sung as a melody over chords. And a chord are simply a bunch of notes all played at once in harmony. If you are a beginning guitarist and you go online or have a book, you will find huge chord charts full of hundreds and hundreds of chords, and it can seem very overwhelming. And it is a bit. But don't worry. If you know just a handful of these chord shapes, you should be able to make almost any chord you need to. And I'm going to show you how. So the most common chord is called a major triad. On a guitar, you can play an E major like this. And you can play an A major like this. Now these shapes are important because they have a superpower, which is the bar. I'm hitting some open and some fretted strings. If I want to move this around, I can use my index finger like an open, move it up. That is an F major, an F sharp major, a G major. Same thing with the A. I can bar this, B, C, C sharp. So, with your knowledge of where to find the notes and those 2 chord bar forms, you can now make any major chord you want. And you don't need a chord chart. You just need to know those 2 chords. The next most common chord is called a minor triad, and it looks very similar to major. There's only 1 note different. So here is an E major. Just lift up your index finger. That's an E minor, and you can bar that. F minor, F sharp minor, B flat minor, D minor. Play it anywhere that's comfortable on the neck. And the same thing with A. Here's the A major, and the A minor, D flat minor, E minor. Congratulations, now you know how to play all major and minor chords. That is 90% of what you're going to need. If you are a self-respecting guitarist, I would also recommend that you learn the open G chord, the open C, the D, and the D minor. Okay, now you can join a band. That is all you need to know. And to prove it to you, let me write down a song that I just wrote. It's not very good. The point is to illustrate. Don't judge me. Here is what will be my song. Let's start with the title. Write it up at the top middle. Now, I wrote this, so let's put the author in and the tempo. Typically, the tempo is signified by drawing a little picture of a quarter note, equals, and I already tapped this out on my metronome app, so I know it's 110 beats per minute. This song uses 4 beats per measure. So at the start, I'm going to say 4 quarter notes. Get it? 4 quarters. Makes sense. Now I'm going to mark measures out. Measures are signified by just drawing a little bar, which is why measures are also called bars. So if somebody says play 4 bars of D, that's 4 measures of D. Speaking of, write the guitar chords in over the top of the 5-line staff. A major chord is simply a capital letter. Next chord is an F sharp minor. Minor chords just put a small letter M after it. There we go. Lyrics are written in underneath the 5-line staff at approximately where they go in relationship to the chords. Now you might be wondering, well, what is the point of the 5-line staff? Well, if you get better at writing music, you can learn how to use the 5-line staff to write the exact melody. But for right now, if you can give your band a lead sheet like this with tempo, time signature, chords, lyrics, and structure, this is going to get you 90% of the way there. Congratulations, you are a real songwriter.
Hey, I just wrote a song. Don't worry, it isn't very long. Do you want to write a song for your next show?